Yes, now bless now people, do not forget the rest now. It's Des Rocksteady at King of the Pit TV. You may know it as KOTP TV. You might think, what does it stand for? It stands for King of the Pit TV, alright? The Stooges. I've just listened to the debut LP by the Stooges, yeah? Made me excited, I'll tell you that. And we're going to have a look at the Wikipedia page. We're going to have a look at the history surrounding the band prior and during this record, alright? So, Stooges heads, if you have any information, any disagreements, any stories, let me know down below. And we'll get stuck in. So, the Stooges, originally billed as the Psychedelic Stooges, also known as Iggy and the Stooges, were an American rock band. So they're not together no more. We're an American rock band formed in Ann Arbor, Michigan in 1967 by singer Iggy Pop, guitarist Ron Asheton, drummer Scott Asheton, and bassist Dave Alexander. Initially playing a raw, primitive style of rock and roll, the band sold few records in their original incarnation and gained a reputation for their confrontational performances, which often involved acts of self-mutilation by Iggy Pop. I wonder to which extent. After releasing two albums, The Stooges in '69, which we've listened to, and Funhouse in 1970, the group disbanded briefly and reformed with an altered lineup, with Ron Asheton replacing Dave Alexander on bass and James Williamson taking up guitar, to release a third album, Raw Power, in '73, before breaking up again in '74. What a shambles. The band reunited in 2003 with Ron Asheton moving back to guitar. Bloody hell, they made the phone call later. After seeing Iggy Pop doing his thing, they were probably thinking, here, let's get a Stooges back together. What's going on? Moved back to guitar, Mike Watt on bass, and the addition of saxophonist Steve Mackey, who had played briefly with the '73-'74 lineup. Ron Asheton died in 2009 and was replaced by James Williamson, and the band continued to play shows until 2013, when they also released their last album, Ready to Die. Fuck, you know. The Stooges formally announced their break in 2016 due to the deaths of Scott Asheton and saxophonist Steve Mackey. The Stooges are widely regarded as a seminal proto-punk act, and I can definitely see why. They had the attitude, the sound, and to whichever extent the sound. Did I say that twice? Who knows? The band was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2010. In 2004, Rolling Stone ranked them 78th on their list of the 100 greatest artists of all time. In 2007, they were awarded the Mojo Lifetime Achievement Award at the Mojo Awards. Right, history. The formation in 1967 to 1968, Iggy Pop, born James Newell Osterberg, played drums in several Ann Arbor area bands as a teenager, including the Iguanas and later the Prime Movers. I like the name the Iguanas, that's hard, that. The Prime Movers nicknamed Osterberg Iggy in reference to his earlier band, the Iguanas. Wow! Osterberg was at first inspired to form the Stooges after meeting blues drummer Sam Lay during a visit to Chicago. Upon returning to Detroit, Osterberg sought to create a new form of blues music that was not derivative of historical precedents, with influence from garage rock bands, the Sonics and the Kinks. Ron Asheton guitar and Scott Asheton on drums, and Dave Alexander bass guitar comprised the rest of the band, with Osterberg as the main singer. Osterberg became interested in Ron Asheton after seeing him perform in a cover band called The Chosen Few, believing, I've never met a convincing musician that didn't look kind of ill and kind of dirty. And Ron had those two things covered. That's quite cool. The three nicknamed Osterberg Pop after local character whom he resembled. Shortly after witnessing an MC5 concert in Ann Arbor, Osterberg began using the stage name Iggy Pop, a name that he has used ever since. Though the Stooges had formed, Iggy Pop attributes two key motivating influences to move the band forward. The first was seeing the Doors. Here we are, the Doors. I thought the first record had so much Doors influence. Most definitely, especially that 10-minute number. Perform at a homecoming dance for the University of Michigan. The second was seeing an all-girls rock band from Princeton, New Jersey called The Untouchable perform. In a '95 interview with Bust magazine, he relates, I had the Stooges, and we did not have the balls to get out and do it. There were two things that made us do it. One was seeing the show, The Doors. We saw that show and I thought, well, this is so brazen, there's no excuse for us to not do it anymore. And the other thing was we went to New York. We had gone to New York a couple of months before that just to check out the scene. And we had never been to a place like New York. We went down around 8th Street. We went down around 8th Street where all the young tourists hang out, and we met these girls from New Jersey, from Princeton. They had a band called The Untouchable, and we're like, oh, you've got a band, sure, haha. And they were like, well, come to our house and see us play. And we didn't have anywhere to crash, and they played for us, and they completely rocked, and we were really ashamed. So maybe a slight little bit of misogyny in that. Maybe. Righto, so what have I missed out? The band's 1967 debut was at their communal State Street House on Halloween night, followed by their next live gig in January 1968. So how far into 67 were their debut, I wonder? During this early period, the Stooges were originally billed as the Psychedelic Stooges at the Grande Ballroom in Detroit, Michigan, and other venues, where they played with the band MC5 and others. At one of their early Grand Ballroom performances, Ashton's guitar neck separated from the body, forcing the band to stop playing during the opening song, I Wanna Be Your Dog. That's classic start up a local band vibes that, yeah, your gear just breaking, especially guitarists, guitar strings snapping and all this and that, we've all been there. The first major commercial show for the Psychedelic Stooges were on March 3rd, 1968 at the Grand Ballroom in Detroit, opening for Blood, Sweat and Tears. According to John Sinclair, who booked the show, the Psychedelic Stooges were substitutes for the MC5, who had formidable Detroit reputation that made Blood, Sweat and Tears reluctant to follow them. A fan who saw several of their performances at that time said what they had achieved was an almost orchestral drone or trance-like sound which was totally unique, valid and impressive. I thought that somewhat hypnotic as they sort of just jam on the same riff song by song. The group's early sound differed from their later music, wrote critic Edwin Pouncey. The Stooges' early musical experiments were more avant-garde than punk rock, with pop incorporating such household objects such as a vacuum cleaner and a blender into an intense wall of feedback that one observer described as sounding like an airplane was landing in the room. Homemade instruments were also incorporated to flesh out the overall sound. The Jim-a-phone involved pushing feedback through a funnel device which was raised and lowered to achieve the best effect. There was also a cheap Hawaiian guitar which pop and guitarist Ron Ashton would take turns in plucking to produce a simulated sitar drone, while that might have been what we've heard on that long track they had on the debut. While drummer Scott Ashton pounded away at a set of oil drums with a ball hammer. So let's have a look. We've got the first two albums and the first breakup here, 1968 to 1971. We'll only have a look into the first album though, because that's as far as we've got in their discography as of the recording of this video. The Stooges soon gained a reputation for their wild, primitive live performances. Pop especially became known for his outrageous onstage behaviour, smearing his bare chest with hamburger meat and peanut butter, cutting himself with shards of glass, and flashing his genitalia to the audience. Pop is sometimes credited with the invention or popularisation of stage diving. In '68, Elektra Records sent DJ/publicist Danny Fields to scout the MC5, resulting in contracts for both that band and the Stooges. The contracts were at different pay rates. MC5 got 20 grand, the Stooges 5 grand, as revealed in the 2016 Jim Jarmusch film Gimme Danger. In '69, the band released their self-titled debut album. Sales were low and it was not well received by critics at the time. Let's have a look at their self-titled then. Quite a bit of information here. So The Stooges is the debut studio album by American rock band The Stooges, released on August 5th, '69 by Elektra Records. You know what, we're going to do a different video for this one so we can discuss the information at hand. I'll see you on the flip side, people. One love.